Alright, so today I'll be talking to you about the specifications to run the OS. So as you can see here, we have the iPad 2 on the left bottom corner, and on the right bottom corner we have the Samsung Galaxy Tab 10.1. The iPad 2 runs iOS 5, or is capable of it. Um, and the Samsung Galaxy Tab 10.1 runs Android's Ice Cream Sandwich. So the Apple devices that support iOS 5, we have the iPhones, which is the iPhone 4S, the iPhone 4, and the iPhone 3GS. The iPhone 4S supports 1 GHz dual-core A9 processor with Apple's A5 chipset. The iPhone 4 has a 1 GHz single-core processor and sports Apple's A4 chipset. And the 3GS is clocked in at 600 MHz and has Apple's A8 processor. The iPads that are supported by iOS 5, we have the original iPad and the iPad 2. The iPad 2 has a 1 GHz dual-core A5 CPU with 512 megabytes of RAM, where the original iPad has an A4 single-core CPU with 256 megabytes of RAM. The iPod Touches that are supported are the third and fourth generation, which both sport Apple's A8 processor and 1 gigahertz CPU with 256 megabytes of DRAM. So the hardware for the iPhone 4S, we have the Apple i5 processor, as mentioned before, the same processor used in the iPad 2, which Apple says will make the iPhone 4S twice as fast as the iPhone 4 with the dual-core processor compared to the single-core. The new dual-core graphics chip, which is up to 7 times faster than the original iPhone 4. It now has 2 antennas, which will work independently to improve call quality and reliability. It has an improved data speed. It can now support up to 14.4 megabits per second. It now has a new camera, which is 8 megapixels, which is improved color, sharpness, better whites. It has a new light sensor, faster speed with taking the first photo and subsequent photos. So the delay between photos being taken is cut down significantly. And it now supports up to 1080p HD video recording with image stabilization. Alright, and now on to Ice Cream Sandwich, which is Android's OS. So the phones that are supported by this OS are the Samsung Galaxy Nexus, the Samsung Galaxy S2, the Sony Xperia Arc, the LG Optimus 3D, the HTC Sensation XL. There's also other phones that are supported by this OS, but there's too many to list as Android is constantly building phones. The tablets that are supported, we have the Motorola Xoom 2 and the Asus E Pad Transformer, which both have dual-core processors. So taking a closer look at the Samsung Galaxy Nexus, we see that it has a 4.65 high-definition glass display, 1.2 dual-core processor, 1 gigabyte of RAM. The processor can actually run at 1.5 gigahertz, but is underclocked to 1.2 for smoother performance. The battery in this device is a 1750 milliamp hour battery. The device has 2 cameras. On the front, it's a 1.3 megapixel camera, and on the rear, it's a 5 megapixel camera with zero shutter lag, which is capable of recording 1080p just like the iPhone 4S. This device can run 4G, so it can also run 14.4 megabits a second download, and it has a newer feature, which is the near-field communication, which is slowly working its way into all the smartphones of today's society. So this is a graph showing the market share for the smartphone operating systems in quarter 4 of 2009. Android was at just under 10%, where iOS was at 15%. And in quarter 3 of 2011, iOS is still at 15%, whereas Android has now climbed to 52% of the smartphone market share. These are two more graphs showing the operating systems. This is actually the end users, which devices are used by end users more. Android in 2011 had 60,490, as opposed to iOS's 17,295. This is compared to quarter 3 of 2010, where Android had 20,544 and 25% of the market share, and iOS had 13,484 and only 16.6% of the market share. This is a great increase for Android, as they doubled their market share percentage since quarter 3 of 2010. iOS is actually maintaining and has increased a percentage over the year difference. The bottom chart shows the smartphone operating profit. As you can see, Samsung, Nokia, Motorola, LG, Sony Ericsson, and HTC are all Android based. And in 2006, they were dominating the profits. But as expected, and in 2011, as you could see, Apple is now taking over that market profitability. And as you can see, they're going to keep growing, and eventually one day they may own all the market share. So in conclusion to this, basically to run both the OSs, Ice Cream Sandwich with Android and iOS 5 with Apple, the device has to have a pretty good CPU and a pretty good chipset to be able to run it. As you can see from the devices here, all of them were over 1 gigahertz processors, except for the 3GS, which then again, iOS 5 does not run great at all on the iPhone 3GS. It's just supported because it's able to run the minimum requirements to run the OS, but it's by no means comparable to the iPhone 4S or the iPhone 4. The market share, as you've seen from the different charts I've shown, Android has started at nothing and has now worked its way to being top in the world in the market share. But as you can see from the second chart I showed you there, Apple is started in 2006 with 2% of the market share, and it's expected that in 2012 they're going to have over 60% of the market share. So you never know where the future is going to lead for these two companies. But I'll let one of my group members talk about the future of both these companies in his presentation. Thanks.